And my first question to you is about yourself. So if you could tell us about yourself, educational background, your personal background, whatever you are comfortable informing about yourself. It could be career, educational, personal, anything you want to tell our viewers and readers.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much. Good day, viewers. My name is Gidraph Wairire. I am from the University of Nairobi, Kenya, where I teach social work and community development and sociology-related courses in the Department of Sociology and Social Work. I have been a social work academic for the last 29 years. I started teaching in 1992, during which I have actually come to love and to cherish and to appreciate social work as I contribute towards strengthening the social service workforce globally through the students that we teach.
Can I just interrupt you? Did you say 29 or 39?
I said 29 years.
That's long service, Dr. Wairire.
I don't know, it's 29 years because I'm actually celebrating my 29th year this year.
Okay.
Because I started teaching in the year 1992.
Okay.
I'm just a young boy.
Yes, wonderful to know that 29 years is quite a long career. Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I am a trained social worker. My undergraduate degree is BSW, that is Bachelor of Social Work degree. And then from there, I proceeded on to do an MA, Master of Arts in Social Work. And I did my MA in Social Work from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai, India. Probably you can Google and be able to familiarize yourself and get to see that institution. It's called Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. You can Google that and you'll be able to get to see more about that institution. Thereafter, I went on and I did my PhD in social work. And I also did my PhD in social work at the University of Pune. Pune is also in India. I did it under the scholarship that was given by the Indian government, courtesy of the Indian Council of Cultural Affairs. So this scholarship was provided by the Kenyan government in collaboration with the government of the Republic of India, but it was only attainable in a university in India. This I did and graduated with my PhD in the year 2000. So from there on, I've been working here in Nairobi and I've been involved in different areas of different facets for social work, interacting with various social work colleagues in Kenya, in East African region, and in Africa and beyond. I happen to serve also as the Vice President of the Association of Schools of Social Work in Africa. I did serve for 5 years. In fact, I was actually one of the pioneer members who were the first officials elected to render our service within this association, which is popularly known as ASSW. And then from 2015 to 2020, last year, I was elected to serve as the president of the same association. And we have contributed immensely towards the growth of social work education institutions in Africa, in East Africa. And of course, we've made our impact felt, seen in the global arena because we are members and accredited to the International Association of Schools of Social Work. Other things that I do include publishing. I also do other things like social work research, and I do some consultancies in social work related issues here in Nairobi. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You talked about the Tata Institute of Social Work in India, and I know it's one of the oldest schools of social work.
Yes, it was established in 1936. So I can agree it's one of the oldest social work training institutions in Asia, not just in India. And it's predominantly known for social work teaching, social work training. And I think they have tried their best in as far as maintaining their name, their status, their impact, their imprint amongst the world of social work academia is concerned. And in as far as enhancing social service workforce is concerned, they have really done wonders.
That's good. It's good to hear that. So, talking about Kenya, how is social work organized in Kenya? You talked about the association. Could you also talk about the history where social work and social services started from and where they are now in your country?
Thank you so much, Jacob. In as far as social work education and practice in Kenya is concerned, I have done quite a number of research in this, and I also have seen some other fellows who may have done the same. And I can say that social work in the Kenyan situation existed even before the country got independent from the British in the year 1963. However, the type of social work that was there prior to independence is not what we call professional social work, so to say. Kind of social work that was there was a mix of many disciplines, but it was geared towards orienting individuals and building their capacity so that they can actually come and work for people who are in need, but of course, with the interest of serving the colonial masters who are there at that time. Professionalized social work now got its base in, shortly before independence, around the year 1962. And this is evidenced by some research which I did. Basically, this was library research. And this happened through the establishment of what we call the Kenya-Israel School of Social Work. What happened is that the Kenya government had actually been given some funding and some grants and assistance by the government of Israel to come and build a workforce within the social development sector that could assist people who are in need and to make sure that the social welfare needs of the people and the emerging nation were adequately met. So it was during this time that this institution was established. This was said to have been established in a place called Machakos in Kenya. And as time went on in the early 70s or late 60s, it was relocated to a government institution that is called Kenya Institute of Administration in Kabete, the Gene School, they used to call it then. And from here, this institution continued training social workers at the diploma level. Many were trained at the diploma level. They pioneer now what you call professional social workers. Because when we use the term professional, we are saying there are people who have a sound base in social work, people, sound knowledge in social work, people who are well trained both in practice and in theory, and then people who have a well-defined code of ethics amongst those other type of things. And of course, then that career has a well-defined area of social responsibility. So these parameters were now the ones to be found within social work that was taking place under what I call Kenya Institute of Administration in Kabete. Now we track and move fast. Come the year 1976, we got the first training institution for social work in Kenya at degree level. And this is the university. This was the year when the first batch of social work trainees at the degree level in a university was admitted. And the outcome of this was very promising. It was actually very good. The batch that was there happened to occupy the social service sector in Kenya, and they did wonders. And from there on, training has moved on. We have quite a number of other universities, both public and private, and other institutions which have come up since that time and which are rendering social work training in the Kenyan situation. I can also confidently say that in the last 2 years, social work educators have now gone ahead in Kenya, and they have actually been able to consolidate themselves and to come up with a voice that is there to boost, build up, young social work academics so that they can understand social work, so that they can grow, not necessarily by going for trainings from other people, but through what we call peer training, or peer learning. They learn from others. They learn from senior social work educators, and they keep on growing. This association has been on now for roughly 3 years. It's a vibrant association that we call Association of Social Work Educators in Kenya. And we are optimistic that it is going to really help many academics to come to grow, particularly on issues to do with networking, issues to do with addressing topical social work issues in Kenya, within the East African region and in Africa, and also with regard to conducting joint researches, and also with regard to publishing, so that the voice of social work can be strengthened in the country.
Oh, thank you.
That's where we are. And I can say, yes, I can say before I forget that the growth of social work training, social work education has not been fast. It has been a little bit slow. This is because of many factors, including the bureaucracy within our academic institutions, our universities. I think amongst many other factors, but this is changing. Right now, I can say we have at least 2 universities which are now geared towards training social work students at the postgraduate level, and they have even been able to come up with social work training at PhD level. But so with time, we can say that we're moving on to the right direction, albeit that this progress is a bit slow. But we'll be there.
Thank you very much. Yes, so thank you very much for sharing information about social work in Kenya. I can see it relates very well with other African countries. For example, in Zimbabwe, where I come from, social work training started in the 60s. Of course, it was before independence, and degree programs in the 70s. So the history aligns. But as somebody who has researched and written on African social work, I've seen your book chapters and journal articles, lots of them. What do you think are the opportunities for African social work?
Thank you, Dr. Jacob. I can see that right now, as we talk, African social work is very, 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 very promising. What makes me say so? Now, if you look at the earlier years, when the profession was coming up, when we were preparing ourselves to teach social work in our university, much of what was being taught was basically something that was, borrowed from the West. It's like we did not have anything that is indigenous, which is actually growing and coming up from Mars. But then that does not mean that did not equip our trainees and the emerging professionals therefrom. It did. It was an eye-opener. It laid the foundation out of which a strong knowledge base for social work was established in the many African countries that embraced social work training. That training has gone ahead and impacted on the people who were to be employed to serve various social welfare sector in Africa. And you can actually see, if you look at maybe the social development sectors, the children's departments, the areas of collection administration, areas also to do with medical settings where we have medical social workers. The training they got then has actually been very positive. It has created a forum where people are able to understand who they are, where people are able to understand the importance of giving and respecting the dignity of individuals that they serve and work with. And this could
Yes. Yes, I lost you a bit.
Yes, I noted there was some disconnection. So basically what I was saying is that the training that we were getting immediately after independence, then we cannot say that it was all bad. Not necessarily. It did play its part. And it laid the foundation where we now have a people who respect each other as they work, a people who understand the dignity of individuals in the workplace, and a people who are ready to come out so that they can address issues and needs of the larger vulnerable groups that we have in our society. Now, coming in now, in the last 7 or so years, I noted another trend in the African social work. And this is now where I realized that many Africans are now saying, we don't just want to depend upon the Western models of social work. We want now to come and see, is there anything that can actually come from us? See, for example, when they sit in class and they only hear about, the Freudian, Sigmund Freud, the Freudian theory.
Psychoanalysis.
The psychoanalysis theory. They only come in and what do they hear? They only keep on hearing about Mary, keep on hearing about Giselle Konopka, them in as far as social group work is concerned. Where we keep on hearing about, the 4 basic systems and that kind of a thing, name it. They are now saying, don't do. And this is happening in maybe 2 important dimensions. The first dimension is now what you call decolonizing social work in Africa. I think that is something that I've noted in the last couple of years, I think about 5 or 6 years. And here we are not focusing so much on decolonization, but we are focusing so much on indigenizing our social work education and training. And this seems to go back again to what I may call the traditional African version of social work, where we are looking at our people. And a very good example that you get here is what is the theme for this year's social work, Ubuntu. It is said that Ubuntu started in South Africa, yes, but we cannot say that Ubuntu is limited to South Africa. It's an African philosophy covering all countries in Africa, save that we use different terms to pronounce it, but the meaning is one and the same. What the African region, and I think the world has done, is to try to interpret it, to simplify it, to about the philosophical preamble of the fact that you are because I am. Together, we can do wonders. Together, we can build or make our world a better place to be.
Interesting issues about indigenization and decolonization. I was going to ask you to give us a bit of more information about the two, especially the differences. I would want to know more about that.
I talk about indigenous social work. This is the one I say that we are looking at who we are as our people and the type of social work that we can actually have. Yes. Without necessarily depending or relying so heavily on the concepts that we happen to get from the West. And then again, when you talk about this indigenization, indigenized social work, we are looking at what are these concepts, what are these practices, what are these methodologies, what are these approaches that have their roots within our traditions, our cultural values, and our orientations from wherever we are. So I don't just want to say we look at it from the African perspective, because even people where you are, we have indigenous communities, and they can also look at it from that particular dimension. Then when we get it from there, what is it that we say portrays, reveals the social work ideals that are global, that are universal? Talk about respect for human rights, talk about respect for social justice, talk about championing empowerment of all people, talk about fighting for the liberation of the displaced people, depressed communities, talk about empowering our people so that they can actually be able to move and progress from one level to another. Talk about, changing those basic social institutions that we have in our society, which might appear to be oppressive to our people. Could there be some indigenous approaches that we can be able to use from there? Now, when we look at decolonizing, when you talk about decolonizing social work again, we need to get rid of the mentality that the social work that you're having is basically something that came as a result of colonization. We need to get to see that even as we render it with due respect and due regard to all people, whether regardless of their race, regardless of their origin and that kind of a thing. So we don't need to do it where we have people who feel they are superior than others. We don't want to do it in a situation where we feel that some people are better than others. We want to really do it and feel like we are operating in a scenario where people have equal rights, where people are one, regardless of their socio-economic situation or their socio-economic status.
That's interesting. Thanks so much for that. Then before you were talking about Ubuntu, which is this year's theme for the World Social Work Day. You did not complete that point. Would you mind going over it?
Yes. I think we had actually talked about Ubuntu, and I'm very happy that I'm talking about Ubuntu. From a a scholar who has actually published on the same, because I know that you did this, Jacob, and I also happened to read what you had actually done. I think together with one or two other colleagues, I did see that kind of an article in the African Journal of Social Work. Now, we've also published on the same. I don't know whether you've seen our article in the Journal of Social Welfare, where we have a subsection that's talking about Ubuntu. And when you talk about Ubuntu, this philosophy of I am because you are because I am, I see it as a concept that comes in to recognize the worth, the value, the worth, the value that the other person has, and which we cannot underestimate, even as we render our services to people in the society where we are operating in. In this connection, therefore, I see Ubuntu revealing this interconnectedness in different ways. If this client was not there, the practitioner would not be there. If this student was not there, the social work student for that matter, then automatically the social work educator would not be there. If this policymaker was not there, and the policymaker is the one who comes in to facilitate the delivery of social work services, whether in government agencies, whether in private organizations, or even in the corporate sector, if they were not there, then the practitioners and all these other stakeholders in social work would not be able to render their services. But then what is the uniting force? Our connectedness, Ubuntu, so that we render our services with due respect to one another. We are because you are. You are because we are. And if you happen to look at it that way, then services can actually be given, and the world definitely can be a better place. The limitation, or what I find as major shortcoming in Ubuntu is that it does not really have any room for, what we call radical social work. And this would mean that those issues which may require a lot of aggressiveness, those issues which may look or which may require a lot of maybe coercion for change to really come, a lot of push, they may not really be accommodated here, because generally speaking, Ubuntu is a philosophy which appears to be very calm, very peaceful, and very moderate in approach to issues that are to be addressed by both practitioners and the beneficiaries of those services. If I'm to give an example here, let me give you an example of this nature. In Kenya, we have what we call, female genital mutilation, or the female cut, the female circumcision. Mm. As a social worker working amongst those communities that practice it, sometimes you realize, after I keep on pleading with the people who do this kind of a practice, at times you realize they may not be responding. Their justification being, this is our cultural right. It's part and parcel of us. It defines us. But me, the change agent, who is the social worker here, I know for sure that this is actually violating the basic rights of this girl who is going through the cut. She is a minor. She has not asked for it. The pain that she goes through is just immense. The psychological trauma that she goes through is just immense. And it is not the one, she's not the one who wants it. It's other people who want it. And then they take glory out of it. Do I stand up there as a social worker? The answer is not necessarily. I will ensure that the law comes in and it's going to be applied to the letter. I may use the police so that they can even come and arrest the culprits or the parents or other people in the community who are practicing it. In that situation, then, is Ubuntu really coming out very well? The parents will see me as an intruder, probably as an enemy, simply because I am coming in to deny them the opportunity to do what they think is actually right, according to their rights and according to their cultural practices. So in such situations, then you may get to see that the Ubuntu philosophy may clash with some of the dearly held cultural practices of a people in a given community.
That's interesting. Thanks very much for elaborating that. Earlier on, you talked about a code of ethics that shape a profession like social work. So when you look at Ubuntu and the values that Africans or we people in Africa use when looking at issues like you already talked about issues like life, but also issues of family, issues of community, issues of culture and relatedness. Where do you see values fitting in, values of social work, which are largely at the moment Western oriented, and values of the communities and families and clients that we work with in Africa? Do you see conflict there?
Not quite. Not quite. I really can't say that there's a big conflict there. The only challenge is, are these values brought out and are these values applied? Do these values become applicable? That's the question, or that's the issue. Now, when you look at the African situation, we keep on saying that social work operates within the social-cultural environment, or the social-cultural, the social-cultural environment of the people who will be the beneficiaries of that social work or of that particular practice. Now, how is this environment? Is this environment influenced by other external factors? The answer is yes. What are these factors? Class, for example, is one. Social class, right? Power dynamics, that's something else, because they are very much in the interplay, particularly within different communities, families, yeah. And then again, religious beliefs and practices. Religious beliefs and practices. Then again, cultural practices and cultural beliefs, including things like taboos that you may find within the community. These things which I have listed down may to a certain extent negate the very purpose of the value that social work enhances, right? It may sometimes negate because some people may look at themselves maybe to be more superior than others. Some people may look at themselves maybe as being much more powerful or maybe being much more blah, 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 blah than others. Yet, social work values comes in here to say, to argue that all are the same, all are equal. Communities, individuals, groups, families, none should be seen to be superior than the other. All are equal, notwithstanding the socio-cultural factors that define them. So at that point, you may get to see the conflict probably coming in. But if families and all these were to view the individual as the same, then in that situation, there would be no conflict. But where that is not done, automatically we get to see some violations of the very same values that we cherish, both as Africans and even in the context of social work practice.
That's interesting. Thanks so much for that. So my next question is about social work models or theories that you normally use in your teaching. You have already talked about indigenization and decolonization, and also Ubuntu. Are there other concepts that you use in your teaching that you think, oh, these are important for other students to know about?
Of course. I don't know whether you are familiar. I'm sure you are familiar with what we call holistic models in social work practice.
Yes.
You know, holistic models. Some people refer to them also as holistic approaches in social work. And a very good example of this is what is used as the systems theory. Now, this model, says that there are systems, and these systems that we live in, yes, are intertwined in different ways. There are factors that come in to affect these systems. And unless we deal with all these factors, we deal with them together, then we cannot be able to say that holistically we are addressing the problems that may be confronting our clientele. So this theory or this approach, this model comes in here to say, therefore, that there is no problem that exists in the society in isolation of other factors. There are other factors that contribute toward the existence of that particular problem. This model, holistic model, goes on again to argue that for this particular problem to be addressed or to be handled, there has to be a set of multi-players to deal with it. The client will not just benefit from the intervention that is being given by the practitioner or the social worker. Some other intervening variables will have to be involved in. So who are these? It talks about who this change, it talks about who will be the person to benefit from this particular change. It goes on to talk about the person who will drive this change, who in this case is the social worker. It goes on also to talk about the target. The target in this includes the person, the factors which could be inanimate, which could be environmental or other things which are responsible for this particular problem. They need to be addressed and they need to be tackled. And it also talks about the processes that will be used so that we can be able to deal with that particular problem. So let me give you this example here. Jacob, I hope you're with me.
Yes.
The problem is what? Say, for example, it's alcoholism in our community where we are working. that problem does not just occur anyhow, but that problem will affect people in their workforce. That people will lower the national economy. That problem will destroy careers of other people. That problem will destroy families. And that problem will bring about trauma to many people in the society. You get to see that? Those are the multi-dimensions of that particular problem. So the question here is, who is affected by this particular problem? In this case, you realize we have the client, that is the consumer, who is consuming or drinking that booze, that alcohol. We have his family, they will be affected. We have the place where he works, they will also be affected in one way or the other. And by extension, we have the society or the community that will be affected. And again, the nation at the end of it all will be affected. Now, can you see that? So we ask ourselves, who will benefit from the change that will be done to address this particular problem? The client himself will benefit. The family, again, will benefit. The community will benefit. And the nation, by extension, will benefit. Then what is it that is causing this particular problem? Now, the same society that will benefit is the one that is contributing to this particular problem by way of creating peer pressure to this young fellow who becomes a drunkard. Out of these, there are people who are, making, selling, distributing these booze, which goes on to do the harm that we get to see. So all of them are the target that we may need to address so that we can deal with this particular problem. The main argument here is, if we were to say that we will only focus on the client in isolation of these other factors, that problem cannot be adequately addressed. Hence, the need to approach it holistically. And this is what I call the holistic model, the holistic approach to doing things. Now, with regard to the process of handling it, whom shall we use? Again, I, being the social worker, I will be there. I will also use family members so that they can also encourage this person. I will use peers, so that they can actually come up and show this particular person. Consuming alcohol is not what will make you get a name. It's not what will make you be who you want to be in the society. Sometimes I will use law enforcement agencies so that law enforcement agencies can come and do what? They can actually come and facilitating the process. For example, apprehend those who are making this brew, those who are selling it, because much of the brew that is detrimental to the well-being of people is actually what we call, illicit brew. And this is something that you find in our many local communities in Africa. So unless we use all this and also come up with government policies, we make sure that we have corresponding legislation to deal with this, it will be difficult for us to manage our problem. So for this reason, I am a champion of what I'm calling holistic models or holistic approaches in as far as handling of problems in our contemporary society is concerned.
That's quite detailed. Thank you very much for that. That's the holistic model. Right. We can go back a bit to opportunities for social work in Africa. You talked about opportunities for social work in Kenya, very positive. Do you see the same opportunities in Africa? And in terms of challenges, I think we talked about opportunities before. In terms of challenges, we did not talk about challenges. So
we never talked about challenges.
Yes, we talked about opportunities in Kenya and opportunities in Africa, but did not talk about challenges. So any quick notes around that, challenges that you see?
Thank you. Yeah, I think we have quite a number of challenges. Honestly, we have quite a number of challenges for social work in Kenya and in Africa. Now, one of the challenges that we are having, Doc, is the fact that a social work has not yet been recognized as a full-fledged profession in many countries in Africa. And where this recognition has not been in place, then you realize that the voice of social workers is not always considered to be important. When this is the case, then you realize that opportunities in terms of service delivery, that are social service delivery, that are supposed to be undertaken by social workers, are undertaken by other people who are not social workers. Even the title social worker, it's not actually protected, it's not actually safeguarded. People just come and, they masquerade as social workers. They grab those opportunities and that kind of a thing. I don't think I am wrong if I say that in many African countries where poverty is the order of the day, and where opportunities for employment are not necessarily given on an equal basis, what reigns or what carries the day in such situations is the technical know-who, but not the technical know-how. What do I mean by that? The technical know-who is, I need a job. I know of somebody who is holding a position in government or in that company or in that organization. If I just go and talk to that person, I will get this job. When that becomes prioritized, then you realize that people who don't even have basic training, basic skills in social work don't get those jobs. And that is a problem that we call nepotism and corruption. Even in employment sectors, the acquisition of jobs, whenever nepotism and corruption carries the day, then social work cannot suffice very well. These individuals will not be able to operate in a dignified manner. These individuals will not be able to follow the basic values and everything else that we advance for in social work, and the beneficiaries will not get that which is intended for them. That becomes a disaster in the practice of social work. Similarly, if this person went on and he started teaching or training social work and he does not have any basic training in social work, the same thing is likely to happen. Because the training that we do, if we are teachers, for example, we don't just do it blindly. We do it based on what we got as we were going through training, and then we do it on the basis of how we have advanced it in terms of our practice and the many years of experience therein. I think I may also come in to say that social work has not been regulated in many African countries. By so saying, I am saying that many countries do not have legislative act of parliament that regulate the way the profession is to be done and that regulate how training in the training institutions is to be done. This therefore creates a terrible loophole where you find that sometimes the desired codes of practice by the practitioners will not get a place where they can be implemented, where you realize that the value base for the profession does not get promoted, because we lack that a legislative act of parliament, and where you get to say that courts get an opportunity to infiltrate the social work docket. And once this is done, then we can get to say that the practice of social work becomes, it's impurified. It's not pure at all. It actually becomes, I'm lacking the better word, it's no longer pure as it is supposed to be. It becomes pure. I think those are just the few that I can quickly state right now.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing the challenges for African social work. Yes, that's very true. Most countries don't have their social work profession is not regulated in Africa, and you can also see that those problems are also experienced outside Africa, where regulation is not there, or where it is there, it's not very strong. for now, I'll just ask you to share anything that you'd want to share with African students, practitioners of social work, if there's anything you want to share.
So what I would like to say as I wind up is it's a word of encouragement that I may want to give to stakeholders in social work practice. And I would like to give this word of encouragement, word of support, keeping in mind the month that we are in, the month that we are calling social work month. And what I would like to say here is that it's a high time that all stakeholders in social work, be they practitioners, be they educators, be they those in policy, yes, it is a high time that we all stand up together to do what we can do best for the sake of our humanity and for the sake of the people that we serve, whether they are students, our nations, and the world that we live in. On the other hand, I think it's important for all of us to really note and to understand that we cannot be able to render our services in isolation of other people. But if we are one, then we'll be able to do the best that we can. Respecting the dignity of others, notwithstanding the backgrounds that they're coming from, is important. And of course, doing the best that we can, that is equally important. And if we do that, we'll be able to get contentment and satisfaction. And our clients will also be able to see value in the service that we give. And the students that we teach or train will be happy. And one day they will recall and remember those who are ahead of us inculcated positive values and virtues for social work, which defined us and which made them who they are. With those few words, Jacob, I say a big thank you to my viewers and to you for facilitating this interview. And I look forward for another opportunity when we can talk more using this technology that we have right now. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking time to speak with us about yourself and about African social work. I think that's really important because we need to make resources, lectures, and our biographies available to African students of social work, practitioners, and also researchers. So thank you very much. Thank you again for taking time to be with us.
Thank you so very much. And I sincerely appreciate. Have a nice one. Enjoy yourself.